When we use the deploy command in BIDS, there are several project properties that control deployment behavior. Here on the Build page of the project properties, we can see the Output Path property, which defaults to the bin folder. This will be the location for the AS database file during the build process. Then we have properties on the Deployment page of the project properties. We have the target server, which will default to localhost when you start a new project, and of course will need to be changed when you're ready to deploy to a development, test, or production server. The database name defaults to the project name, but you can change this as necessary. Then we have processing options. As you can see, the default is default, and with this option, analysis services will only process the dimensions and the cubes if they're impacted by any changes that you've made. So in addition to the default option, we have the Do Not Process option. And in that case, when you use the deploy command, you can prevent analysis services from automatically processing any item that's changed. If you have a large database, that can help you save time. Then you can process on a scheduled basis or start the process manually at your own convenience. Then there's the full option, and in that case, analysis services will do a full process of the database, including all of the cubes and all of the dimensions. This could take a long time if you've got a lot of data for your database, so this option isn't really recommended. We'll learn more a little bit later exactly what a full process means. We also have a property controlling transactional deployment. The default setting is false. That means if anything fails during the deployment process, then any files that have been copied over to the analysis server will stay on the server, but they'll be in an unprocessed state. So that means we won't be able to browse our dimensions or browse our cube depending on what it was that we were trying to deploy. And usually when we're deploying from BIDS, we're deploying to a development or to a test environment, so it's usually okay to leave our objects in that unprocessed state. The other option is to set this value to true. That means both the deployment of changes and the processing are considered to be a single transaction. So if anything fails during that deployment process, everything rolls back and the server is returned to its original state as if you had done nothing at all. And then last we have the deployment mode option. As you're working within BIDS, you have a local copy of files. But remember that deployment copies those files over to the data folder of analysis services. When we use the deploy changes only option, the deployment process compares the files on your local workstation to the files that are on the analysis services server and checks for changes. Anything that has changed will be copied over and processed, in addition to any dependent objects. The alternative is to use deploy all, which deploys the entire database no matter what. And in that case, the entire database will need to be reprocessed before we can query dimensions or the cube.